Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. Before I begin this video and you'd like to use OCD Recovery's coaching services, please reach out to Phil at ocdrecovery.com and he will get back to you as quick as he can. So I wanted to speak a little bit about fear of rejection and how that can look, my experiences with it, and how we can, get better from this fear that can paralyze us in so many different ways. So with fear of rejection, right, what tends to happen is we look outside rather than look within. You know, it's almost like you're waiting for the world to tell you who you are rather than you telling yourself who you are. And it's almost saying, you know, my worth as a person my worth as a person rests on the approval of somebody else. But, you know, when we look at it like that, it's very irrational, right? So why does this person decide my worth? Why do they have the final say? How can they have all the information about me to come to the final conclusion that I'm, you know, in their eyes, not a very good person or, you know, a bad person, which is irrational in itself? How come they can decide who I am? Why don't I have the final say, you know? So we tend to put a higher degree of weighting on other people's views of us, and we tend to overlook ourselves as a human being. We overlook what we bring to the table, right? And you know, sure, rejection is unpleasant, you know, especially when you get rejected for the first time. It might be, you know, anywhere, dating or in work or anywhere. That feeling of rejection does sting. But the problem is that when we have the extreme emotions over rejection, so, you know, I mustn't be rejected, being rejected is awful, and then, you know, we sort of go into our shell and we feel a bit paralyzed because we felt rejected, and we don't want to experience that again because we perceive that sensation of being rejected. So, you know, shame, guilt, we perceive that to be so bad that we tend to, you know, stay cocooned in our lives and not take the risks and, you know, not want to rock the boat. So we do have to be very careful of that, right? What can happen is with rejection, right? You know, you might be scared of somebody rejecting you by the way you look, and you can sometimes see that, you know, you might be out and about in your day and you make eye contact with a person and it just happens for a second and then they maybe look at you funny, right? I used to get this a lot. I'd be out and about and I think, oh, why are they looking at me funny? Is there something wrong with me? Do I look different? XYZ, right? And you know, when you see somebody looking at you and they have that thought impulse, you're essentially saying that the thought impulse of somebody else, which happens in their brain, and which doesn't physically harm you, you're saying that that's awful. Well, how does that make sense? It's literally just a thought that somebody's had. Not only do you have any control over what they think, but the natural thought impulse in the brain of another person about you is hardly going to affect you or your physical well-being, right? So when you look at it like that, it's very irrational, okay? Another example, you know, rejection. So are there instances where other people have handled rejection? Well, yes. You look at football matches, for example. Every week you've got, you know, football players, especially in the England Premier League where I'm from, which is the best league in the world for football. You get players being sworn at, booed, hollered at by fans, and, you know, they laugh it off and carry on playing the game. You know, it's a perspective in there. They still have a great life, even if they did get rejected by somebody. You know, rejection is, unfortunately, it's pretty much unavoidable, right? Being a human being, you could be the most perfect person, right? You could have everything going for you, the most money, the best job, the best looking, and people are still going to say stuff about it, right? I'll give you an example. So I've got a brother, and him and his partner have recently had a child, and they were coming up with names for the child. And it's funny, we were discussing it with the family, and no matter what somebody said, somebody was always saying, oh, no, it doesn't really go well. Oh, you could call her this instead. Oh, no, call her that. You know, no matter what you do, what you say, even if you're this great person, right? Great person, people are still going to say things about you. And that's very much unavoidable, you know. Having said that, people aren't probably nearly concerned about us as what we think they are. You know, we think other people are deathly concerned of us, whereas in reality, they're probably deathly concerned about what other people think of them and have no time to think about us, right? Which is another perspective. It's not a reassurance in any way. It's just a fact. Like, how much are you thinking about the person that you saw in the street last week that you made a few seconds eye contact with? more often than not, you're probably not thinking of them very much. You know, you've got your own stuff to deal with, you've got your own life going on, you've got your own things to think about. All right, so that's, yeah, like I said, it's not reassurance, it's just a reality. You know, we're not that important in the eyes of other people, which in a way is actually quite liberating, because, you know, we can live life on our own terms and not be so shackled by what they think of us. Okay, so with fear of rejection, you know, unconditional self-acceptance can really help to act as a shield against, you know, rejection from other people. When you have your own approval, you're less concerned generally about what the surrounding environment thinks of you, because you're saying that, look, I'm okay the way I am. I see myself as valid. I accept myself for the way that I am. I don't need another person to dictate or tell me who I am, or tell me if I'm okay or not, because I myself have unconditional self-acceptance of myself as a human being, and see that, yeah, I'm okay because I exist, and for that I have value, for that I have worth. So that's really important. Okay, I'm not saying that people with unconditional self-acceptance don't get bothered by rejection. Sure, you might have unconditional self-acceptance and be bothered if your partner rejects you, sure, but you know, it's the extreme emotion, and it's when you put the weightage of somebody else's thoughts about you above the thoughts that you have yourself, which is when it's problematic, right? So another example then, so rejection. So having or facing rejection can actually benefit us, right? So imagine you're in a relationship, and you know, there's a certain element that you get rejected for. Maybe there's some sort of behavior that you do. Maybe you're lazy or don't tidy up after yourself. You know, if your partner rejects you, or, you know, lets you know about that, that's actually going to be a positive, because you can identify that area to work from and improve in the future, to grow. It's like, you know, maybe another example, you submit a job resume and you get rejected, and they give you feedback on what your resume said or where you went wrong. You know, that rejection can actually really help you and provide the redirection and impetus for future growth, right? So, you know, that's actually very beneficial to you. Also, as well, if you get rejected by somebody, maybe there's like a family member or a friend who ends up rejecting you for something, right? That can actually help you to weed out the bad relationships in your life, and actually, you know, form better relationships. You know, if somebody rejected you because you're XYZ in your friends and family, yes, not ideal, but you know then to not invest your time and energy into that person who doesn't think well of you, and you can, you know, use that to build yourself up and form better relationships with other person, right? So, you know, there's always some benefits to rejection. It's never just doom, like you're doomed, you're worthless, you're no good. It's never that. There's always some mitigating factors, right? There's always a silver lining that can come from rejection. All right, so with rejection, you know, it's like with any other OCD theme. It's beliefs and behaviors. You know, it's using exposures to sort of get accustomed to the possibility of being rejected. You know, shame attacks. This is why shame attacks are so important. You know, we typically use the 2-week shame attack model at OCD recovery, which is something that we can go into in coaching calls. But, you know, it's gradually building up to those worst case scenarios. So you might start off with something that's, you know, not very triggering in terms of rejection, and then you gradually build up to something that you might find is very triggering. But as you move through that hierarchy of exposure, you tend to find that, you know, that end exposure that you may have found really scary isn't so scary, because you built up to it, and gradually you sort of learning that rejection isn't so bad. You know, you really need to see that. And also the beliefs as well. You know, why should I not be rejected? Why should I be exempt from being rejected? Why is being rejected so awful? And, you know, fear of rejection does fuel a lot of the OCD cycles. So you tend to find that as you target this area, like target the roots of the core fear, which is rejection, those themes that stem off from the core fears. So, you know, maybe in HOCD, maybe in harm OCD, that just sort of come away from that core fear. As you dig up the roots of that, you find that OCD across the board starts to lose its power, because, you know, you tend to find that there is a common denominator of rejection across different themes. So being free from fears of rejection is so worth it. You know, it's so liberating to you know, live life on your own terms and not be constrained by what other people think. It's very easy to do that being in society now. You know, most of society is scared of what other people think. And, you know, we can sort of use certain behaviours to try and shield us from that. You know, we might seek validation on social media, or, you know, we're constantly chasing this thing that's outside of us, when in reality our perception of ourselves is going to trump any fears of rejection. You know, when you're okay and you have that unconditional self-acceptance, you tend to find that fears of rejection, you know, are diminished, right? I'm not saying that they're never there, but it really helps it to become more manageable when you really see that it's not so scary. So always be thinking, you know, how can I, you know, push myself when it comes to rejection? How can I make myself a little bit uncomfortable, you know, in work, you know, dating? I'm not saying be blasé and don't give a second thought, but just really have a think, you know, how can I keep chipping away at this fear of rejection? You know, can I start a conversation with the barista in the coffee shop? You know, can that be something that I can work with? And you'll find that as you do that, you know, you get lots more momentum, and you want to move on to the next stage and to the next stage and to the next stage, right? So yeah, that's very important to consider. You know, yes, rejection is unpleasant, but when we give it this awfulizing, this deathly thing, then that's a problem. And, you know, holding those beliefs towards rejection doesn't really get us into a place of recovery. You know, we have to look at where these beliefs about rejection are holding us. You know, do you want to be a prisoner to rejection your whole life, or do you want to break free of those shackles? And yeah, it's going to feel uncomfortable when you do that, but it's all about trading that short-term discomfort for the long-term comfort. You know, being in peace, not worrying about what other people think of us, and living life, you know, like no one's watching you, which is what you want, because we're only here for a short time, and you don't want to be living your life constrained by the views of other people. So yeah, freedom from rejection is out there. Think about how you can break free from the shackles of rejection. Look at the shoulds, oughts and musts, and the awfulizing about rejection, and how your behaviors can also line up with that. And you'll find that you can really help to tackle those core fears in your OCD cycle. All right, guys, thank you. Comment down below, and I'll see you on the next video.